My name is Mia Hamley and I work with an organisation called Headspace as a psychologist. A little bit about Headspace. Headspace is a non-profit mental health youth foundation focused on aiding the youth with any problems related to mental and physical health, drugs and alcohol, and work and study. Today I'll be discussing with you the topic of health, stress and well-being. More specifically, the stress placed on you as high school students and methods that you can use to cope with the impacts of this stress to minimize them. First of all, what is good health and well-being? Well, according to the World Health Organization, health is a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Furthermore, student well-being is defined as a sustainable state of positive mood, attitude, resilience, satisfaction with self, relationships, and experiences at school. These feelings of well-being are ultimately fundamental to the overall health of someone. As we know, all teenagers experience some level of stress. Some of this can even be good and healthy. However, many struggle with a significant stress level, especially during high school and the later years of schooling. This can interfere greatly with learning, relationships, and other areas of functioning. Overall, this stress can be seen mostly negatively impacting students and their overall health and well-being, ultimately having adverse effects on their learning, study, and functioning. Next, what is stress? Well, stress, as defined by the Mental Health Foundation, is the degree to which you feel overwhelmed or unable to cope as a result of unmanageable pressures. More simply put, stress is our body's response to pressures placed on us from a situation or a life event around us. A stressor is a term used to describe the stimuli that cause or produce stress and challenge our ability to cope. These can be external or internal. Furthermore, these sources of stress can be categorized into 5 different areas, including daily pressures or hassles, life events, acculturative stress, major stresses, and catastrophes. More specifically, for stress related to high school students, they could be put into categories such as academic, which might involve stress related to getting into a good university, getting good grades, staying on top of the workload, as well as family and family discord, such as concerns financially for your family or any illnesses in your family. And also, of course, social, such as keeping on top of extracurricular activities and other responsibilities and keeping good and healthy relationships with friends. Overall, all these stresses contribute to a significant level of stress for many high school students. An important side note of stress is that what contributes to it can vary greatly for each individual and does so according to many different aspects such as social and economic circumstances. Next, I'm going to talk a bit about stress as a biological process. Seeley's General Adaptation Syndrome, or GAS model, is a theory formulated by Hans Seeley in 1936. It is based on the physiology and psychobiology of stress. Comprised of 3 stages, including the alarm stage, resistance stage, and exhaustion stage. In the first alarm stage is when the person first becomes aware of the stressor and the body goes into shock, falling below the initial normal level of resistance to stress, and then counter shock, before going into the next stage, resistance, where your resistance to stress rises above the normal level of resistance to stress. In this stage, also, all unnecessary physiological processes are shut down in order to put all the efforts in to combat the stress. Lastly is the exhaustion stage. This is where our body has been depleted of all its resources to deal with the stress and can no longer sustain resistance. This stage is where you see most of the effects of the prolonged stress, including headaches and migraines, aches and pains in muscles, weakened immune system, and many more. Another important physiological response to stress is the fight, flight, freeze response. This response is an involuntary physical response to a sudden and immediate threat in readiness for fight, involving confronting and fighting off the threat, flight, which involves escaping to safety, freeze, which involves keeping still to avoid detection. Some of the measurable physiological changes which occur during this response include increased heart rate, increased breathing rate, dilation of your pupils, and distribution of blood to skeletal muscles, and more. On the other hand, stress as a psychological process takes into account the psychological responses to stress, including emotional changes such as fear or anger, cognitive changes which would impair judgments and decision making, or poor concentration, and behavioral responses such as aggression, irritability, and or poor posture. Furthermore, these factors are not considered independent of each other either. Rather, they combine in different ways within each individual to have more or less impact on their response to a stressor. Now for some strategies for coping with stress. How we choose to cope with a particular stressor can have a great impact on both its immediate and long-term effects on our mental and physical health. Coping can be described as all the different things we do to manage and reduce the stress we are experiencing. Furthermore, stress mediators, encompassing the concepts of predictability and the perception of control. These state that the input depends on how stresses are perceived. They can be perceived as less intense if seen as a challenge to be overcome, and that simply believing that a stressor is controllable can reduce its overall impact. Overall, there are many different types of coping strategies, and there is not a single right way to cope. There isn't any particular strategy that suits everyone either. Some strategies will work better and therefore be more effective depending on a range of factors, such as the nature of the stressor, the individual, and the stressful event itself. Next, I will discuss approach and avoidance coping strategies. Approach strategies involve efforts to confront and face a stressor, directly dealing with it and its effects. In contrast, avoidant coping strategies involve efforts that evade the stressor, dealing with it more indirectly. Some examples on this slide show mindsets of approach and avoidant coping. So approach coping might look like, oh, I've made a plan of action, I'm going to follow it, or I'm trying to find out more information as much as I can so I can work this out. Whereas avoidant coping might look something like, I stopped trying, I'm giving up, or I sleep more than usual, or change the subject. In terms of high school, you might be experiencing the stress of an upcoming exam. So involving an approach effect might focus on working harder and spending more time studying, whilst remembering to maintain a healthy lifestyle. Whereas, or alternatively, in this situation, an avoidant effort might look something like eating more, playing more video games, or procrastinating and avoiding trying to study. Approach strategies are generally considered to be more adaptive and more effective than avoidance strategies. It has been found that people who rely on avoidance strategies tend to be impacted negatively, such as increases in vulnerability to mental health issues and stress-related physical problems. Lastly, some methods you could use to cope with stress of high school. Firstly, exercise. Exercise has many benefits for your overall health and well-being and aids in reducing stress through reducing the level of stress hormones, as well as the release of endorphins, which relieve pain and increase a sense of well-being and relaxation. Secondly is practicing mindfulness. This method can overall just improve your mood as well as lead to a less intense stress response. This may be as simple as taking some time to slow down and pay attention, taking time to notice everything around you, using all your senses and enjoying it. Thirdly, social support. It is also very important and it works by promoting positive approaches to stress, in turn leading to increased coping ability and flexibility. These are all examples of coping which would be easy to fit in around studying and other commitments whilst in high school. That's all for today. Thank you everyone for attending this class.